Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here with another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy Bahat. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And I'm here with Erica Schultz, who is the president of field operations for Confluent, although we met where she did something very useful for us in another life at another company. And so it's just great to see people's paths progress. And the question today is, we've done the employee or talent version of this question, which is like, if I feel like I am not obviously the perfect match on paper for a job, how do I apply for the job? And what I think is interesting about this question is now we'll take the leader's perspective, which is, when as a leader do I take a risk on a team member who might not be experienced? And we just love any and all wisdom that you have. And thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. Nice to see you again, Roy. Thanks for having me. And I think this is such a great question because let's face it, haven't we all had somebody place a bet on us at some point before we had the experience for the job? And each of those moments has been so instrumental to all of us getting to where we are. So I think it's such a great question. And I think about this a lot, that, you know, as we build teams, as we build companies, in addition to being great at hiring from the outside and being attractive to seasoned talent, we also have to be great at developing and promoting our own internal talent and having environments where people can do the best work of their careers and grow in their career. So I actually think this is like a muscle that we all have to build as great team builders out there. Yeah. And I think, you know, the ultimately for me, it comes down to, so first off, I don't think there's any magic answer to the question, like, when is it the right time? But I'll share with you know, some of my criteria, and I'll share a personal story. But, you know, the first kind of criteria that I think of, and this was, you know, in the quote card, is like, we are all a balance sheet. We all come with assets and liabilities. So anytime we put anyone in a new role, we are doing that consciously, knowing that that individual brings both assets and liabilities to the role. And so if you're putting someone in who's less experienced, you're just making a trade-off decision between some assets they might bring. Like if it's an internal candidate, maybe there's someone who has developed great expertise as an individual contributor, but they don't have management experience. So the asset is subject matter expertise. The liability is don't yet have management experience. Or you could hire someone from the outside who has management experience, but maybe doesn't know your company as well. Sure. So that's a different trade-off decision. So I always think every candidate has assets and liabilities, and it's an active trade-off that we make. And, you know, I also think about, okay, when we're putting someone who's less experienced in that stretch role, it's both about betting on that person and their ability to learn and their ability to grow into the role, but also it's on us as managers and leaders to set them up for success. So you might want to think differently about, okay, is there an additional mentor that I can assign to that person as she steps into that stretch role for the first time, so that they have somewhere to go to ask a whole bunch of questions that maybe they're not comfortable going to their manager about all the time, but how can we give them a little more like support to make sure they're truly successful in that role?
So let me ask, sorry, did I interrupt you?
Nope.
Let me ask about an aspect of this, which is, and if there are moments from your career where you took a chance on someone that you want to share, be helpful to understand. One of the things that we've talked about before is, if you're a candidate applying for a role where you may lack experience, a thing that you can do is reduce the risk for the hiring manager of hiring you. Well, I'll do a project for you to prove myself or something like that. From the manager's perspective, I often find one of the reasons why managers are reluctant to take a bet on somebody is what I call the next team meeting effect, which is when I show up in the next team meeting and I need to explain to everybody why we hired this person. If they don't have obvious experience, I feel exposed. I feel like I'm taking a career risk. If the person, you know, worked at IBM and they don't work out, everybody understands, right? You know, and everybody gets fired for buying IBM kind of idea. But if you've taken a chance on somebody and they don't work out, oftentimes that can be riskier for you as the leader, or at least you can perceive it that way. And so I'm curious, A, whether you agree that it's riskier for the manager, and B, whether or not it is, how do you manage that risk of hiring somebody less experienced?
Yeah, well, first off, I think the manager should have clarity on why are they making a bet? What is the asset in that individual that they see? And so have a narrative. on what's the bet we're making. Well, so-and-so either has proven themselves inside the company in a different role for a period of time, or so-and-so is coming from a different company, and we think that their experience will be really valuable in this way. So have that narrative. And it's also okay to like make it clear that you're kind of making a bet. Like and acknowledge, like, I know this individual doesn't have leadership experience yet, but we think this subject matter expertise is going to be so accretive to the team that we're going to make a bet on that. The other thing is, if it's an internal candidate, you're going to get credit. People want to see that you totally, that you make bets on internal people who are working hard and who show promise. And so you'll get some credit. And I think you'll get a little bit of like, grace for making that decision. And then again, it comes back to like, what else can you do to make sure that person is successful? Because you want a success story out of that.
Yeah, bet. I also think real talk, you get credit if the person is from an underrepresented background too. Mm-hmm. It's easier to take a chance, I find, as a leader on somebody who may not, look the part of what the traditional stereotypes are. And that's good because it improves diversity in the workforce and you get other ideas. And I love acknowledging the vulnerability of, look, I'm taking a chance here too, and not all chances work out. And it's okay for leaders to take chances. I've also seen managers have as simple a rationale as they perform better on this part of the interview than any candidate we've ever interviewed, or honestly, they're available. We've been trying to recruit for this role for 6 months and this person can try it. And if they don't work, we'd have probably spent 3 months searching anyway, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on how to manage that, bringing somebody aboard? Is there something different about hiring somebody who's less experienced in terms of how you take the first few steps with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can also point out to your team, like, for example, I know that I'm 27 years into this enterprise tech journey. I see myself, hiring people who are of my vintage oftentimes, and I catch myself. I'm like, okay, whoa, you need to mix it up a little bit. Let's just use age as a criteria. And so if I'm going to bring someone younger onto my leadership team, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to be like, hey, everybody, we all grew up in enterprise tech in the 90s. So we need some like new, fresh perspective of someone who doesn't have, 25 years of muscle memory of traditional enterprise tech, but maybe grew up in startups and growth tech and PLG, and that's all they know. That's actually accretive to us. Yeah. And so I think you can kind of call it out and name it, and that can be really valuable.
I also find that sometimes the bets we're taking are, especially at early startups, are on older talent.
It goes the other way too.
Flows both ways. And we got one question from LinkedIn, which I'll just pop in here, which is, why don't employers focus interviews more on employee fit into company culture versus qualifications, degrees, and work experience? And I guess, I'll offer a perspective first, and then Erica, whatever you have to add, which is, I think that many employers do fit interviews. I think that the hard part is fit. One of the reasons I think we tend to judge people based on simplicity of their experience being a match is it's an easy thing to judge. Really telling, like staring into somebody's eyes in an interview and thinking, how will they work out at our company? It's not a thing that people can do. The data suggests the interviews are just not very reliable on that. And so as a result, you measure fit by having the person start at some level. I'm curious what you think about this fit versus qualifications question.
I also think fit can be a dangerous word because I think unconscious bias can seep into fit. Because what is fit? Are they like us? And so I think you have to be really careful with that. Go back to the age examples. If you're a young startup, but you're looking at somebody who's in their 50s or older saying, do they fit?
Right.
And so I think you want to be careful with that. But I think really clicking down into what does fit mean? What are your values? Are you a collaborative culture? And will the person fit into that, et cetera? So I think that's
I love that.
Great question.
I love that.
I'd love to share stories related to this notion of making a bet on the less experienced team member. I'll tell one where I had an opportunity to make a bet on someone who was in my own organization. Then I'll tell a story about someone who made a bet on me and how like life-changing and career trajectory changing it was for me. But the first one, I had a leader at a prior company who had a great track record as an individual contributor. And she was admired by her peers. She was valued by everyone she worked with and her customers. And she wanted to get into a management position, but she had no management experience. And so we made the bet on her to put her into a leadership role. And it turned out her manager made the observation. He said, I'm trying to coach her, but I need some guidance because she really lacks confidence in this management role. And we kind of broke it down. We said, well, why might that be? Well, one, she just got promoted to be a manager of all of her peers. That can be nerve-wracking. Two, English is not her first language. That can be nerve-wracking. And so therefore, your job as her leader is to create confidence because she has the competence. So what can you do as a leader yourself, or surrounding her with other influences, to take that amazing raw material and then help develop the confidence, and then you have the whole package. So I think being conscious of when you make that bet, what do you as a leader need to do? The other story I'll share, is my own. So when I was 2 years, and I started at Oracle in the 90s, as I already shared. I started as an SDR. 2 years in, I wanted to put my Spanish and Latin American studies major to use. And so I moved to Buenos Aires, Argentina with Oracle, which was amazing, both personally and professionally, just really great. And I was managing a small team of SDRs for a period of time. And then now we're in 1999, and everything is growing, and the .com boom, et cetera. And I get an offer to move to Miami with my boss, who'd been promoted to run all of Latin America for Oracle and build an inside sales team of 100 people. And I had neither ever carried a bag, nor had I run a team of more than 5 people. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you sure? Me? Really?" And I said, "I don't know how to do this." And he said, "I know you don't yet, but I know that you're hardworking and you're resourceful, and you're going to figure it out. And I'm going to give you a resource." He gave me his ops director to kind of lean on as a go-to mentor. And so he really made this big bet on me. And I'll tell you, it was exhausting and it was stressful and it really, really stretched me, but it was so life-changing and just career trajectory changing that I'm forever grateful. So it's personal.
I feel like it's hard to find a company that doesn't have somebody in leadership who did a job they weren't qualified to do. I don't know if I've ever been qualified to do any job I've done, including the one I've been sitting in for the last 9 years. But we make it up as we go. All right, I'm going to make sure we get you to your next meeting on time. So for folks who are watching us for the first time, the reason we say it's not advice is because we're just sharing our own experiences. You're going to have to make your own choices. And if you want to find past episodes, you can go to thisisnotadvice.org and eventually be able to find the write-up here with Erica. And Erica would love to have you back and just continue the conversation. So thank you.
Awesome. Great to chat with you, Roy. Thank